His doctor said he shouldn't even be alive.
Every moment of his life has been a feat.
He was living in a nightmare, paralyzed from the neck down.
It destroyed my life. It took everything from me.
And had to watch as everyone around him died.
Then the next day, they come and take him out. The other one did, and I wondered why. Why did you take her? I was making friends.
But he survived.
Yeah, I count myself to be just that, a survivor.
Paul lived in an iron lung for 71 years, which is recognized as a Guinness World Record.
The machine, I can tell you that it is another way of life.
All odds of surviving were against him.
The mind was extensive, one of the worst cases ever recorded.
But this isn't the story of someone who didn't make it, or one of someone who had a miserable life.
Paul would defy doctors and survive 73 more years, become a lawyer, write books, live a full but difficult life.
This is the story of a survivor, someone who, despite unimaginable challenges, was happy and had a full life.
And I'm still here.
When I learned about this, I had to find out how he did it. And what I learned through researching his life might shock you. If you don't recognize the name Paul Alexander, you might know him as the man who spent over 70 years in an iron lung. Paul was just 6 years old in the 1950s, the height of the polio epidemic in North America. Everyone at the time was terrified of getting the disease that, if you survived, would lead to pain, fever, vomiting, and in some cases, paralysis. And so when, in July of 1952, at just 6 years old, he went to tell his mom he wasn't feeling well, her face went white. Soon after being diagnosed, Paul would become paralyzed from the neck down and have to live in an iron lung that breathed for him. After 2 years in a congested hospital, his parents made the brave decision to take the lung home to live out his days in peace. However, instead of dying, Paul spent over 70 years like this. Eventually, he learned how to breathe manually by gulping air, more on this later, so he could leave the lung for a few hours a day. And through it all, he didn't let it hold him back. He became a lawyer, an author, and a beacon of hope for others. In this video, I will share with you the 5 most important lessons that we often learn too late in life from Paul Alexander. Before we get started, I'm Joel. This is where we share stories from the most motivational people on the planet. Many people who you've never heard of before, who have incredibly valuable lessons that we can all learn from. Please subscribe and turn on notifications for when we release new videos. We are a relatively small and new channel, and every subscriber counts. And that it just allows us to create new videos like this one. Okay, on to lesson number 1 from Paul. Don't listen to the doubters. You can pursue your dreams no matter the circumstances. And to quote Paul, if you're still here on earth, you have a purpose. The doctors would talk to Paul like he wasn't even there, saying things like, he's going to die today and he shouldn't even be alive. They discarded the idea of Paul having a future. But Paul didn't give up. And I think I figured out a few of the reasons for why that is. Part of Paul's motivation and his will to live came from his parents. Despite everything, in an interview he talked about how they loved him, supported him, and told him he could do anything. They even encouraged him to pursue his dreams, and he believed them. And over time, he grew to understand that if you're still here on earth, you have a purpose. Another motivator in his life was his physical therapist. Paul loved dogs, and while learning to breathe without the lung was thought of as nearly impossible, no one else had accomplished this before. She promised him a dog if he could learn to breathe on his own for 3 minutes. It took him almost a year, but he persisted and he did it. And he got his dog.
And she said, I would like a box of puppy. Can I just lost it? And she says, okay, this is a deal. If you can breathe for 3 minutes, the iron lung, I'll give you a box of puppy. And I was just like, oh boy, because I knew I couldn't breathe. So she put a watch up here, and we started practicing. And I spent my lifetime doing what everyone said. Paul, you can't do that. It happened. Got my 3 minutes in. I got my puppy.
Eventually, he was able to learn to gulp air manually and breathe without the lung for an hour. And then after 3 years of effort, he got to 2 hours. While I was researching Paul, I wondered how he was able to cope with the boredom he must have felt while he was trapped inside the iron lung. He explained in an interview that, especially in the first few years of the hospital, the boredom was unrelenting. But the severity of this challenge allowed him to create new solutions. Even though they couldn't talk to each other, the children in the ward made friends with each other by making faces at each other across the room. When asked about his hobbies, Paul talks about loving nature, but also he used his time to study, to read. He went to college. He went to the University of Texas. He got 3 degrees. Eventually, he became a lawyer. He also published books and spoke about hope and inspired people around the world. He proved that you can live a full life regardless of your situation.
When you reach an hour, I take you outside. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the struggle. I enjoyed the challenges. I enjoyed the people. I was determined to go on to college. It took me 2 years to convince SMU, the school closest to my home, that I should be accepted. I was finally, and I stayed there 2 years and took most of the courses. And then I got real ambitious. I get up in the morning and I say, what can I do today to accomplish something? I proceeded to spend 15 years in Austin, where I got 3 degrees, including a law degree. And I came back to Fort Worth, finishing the bar exam, and I started my own law practice.
Okay, on to lesson number 2. You can overcome any challenge, but you might need to think outside the box and come up with unconventional solutions. Paul is an author, but how is it possible to write when you're paralyzed from the neck down? Even when he was in law school, he couldn't take notes, so how could he write a book? Well, Paul wrote his book with a pencil in his mouth that pushed buttons on a computer. This unconventional and tedious method took him more than 8 years to write, but eventually the book became a bestseller. The lesson here again is persistence, but also in thinking outside the box, especially for challenges that not many others have faced.
The book that I wrote with my mouth. Pencil. And it's the first book I've ever written. It was kind of a major event in my life. But the incredible part of doing it was that it took off all over the world. When I published it, I thought, okay, friends might pick it up, the world picked it up. All the way from Russia, Middle East, Europe.
Lesson number 3. Give all the love you can to others and accept the love you receive. When Paul first mentioned he was feeling sick, his parents were distraught. It must have been so hard for them to be away from him and watch him suffer so much, but they didn't give up on him. While the doctors had very little hope for Paul, Paul's parents showed him unconditional love that changed his life. They visited him every day and even insisted on him coming home for Christmas in those first 2 years. To transport him in the iron lung, they had to rent a truck and a portable generator, but they did it. If the power ever went out, the lung actually had to be operated by a pair of bellows, and neighbors would come and help. And as Paul received this love, he learned to give it to others. This is a lesson to everyone. Give all the love you can to others and accept the love you receive.
Something I dreamed about when I got there. Every day. Every day. Mom, I want to come home. My parents would take to the doctors and Christmas is down the road. Oh. A couple of days, we're taking him home. Their doctor said, what? So they got a big truck. They put a generator in it. They put my iron lung in it. With me in it. Kind of a whole life lived with him. And it was amazing. You know, if they talk about God's love, that's just words. But when you actually receive it, boy, it's something. My parents, I don't believe anybody could be like that. I cannot believe that people exist.
Lesson number 4, be grateful for the challenges and the lessons you learn from them. No matter what you're going through, it's worth it to keep going. Since Paul is such an inspirational figure, many have reached out to him over the years for advice on their own problems. To those suffering, especially those with mental health problems who feel like giving up, Paul says that life is precious and it's not worth giving up on.
Very personal. About credit. That's right, Trump. Best I know. There'll be a lot of people to see. I love to say, I would help it all. Probably. That's because I can't touch someone. I hate someone. No one touches me. Except for rare cases. Which I cherish. Very insecure. Life is such an extraordinary thing. And when you believe it or not, you has got to work for it. You change it.
And that's why if you're still here, you owe it to yourself to fight like hell. You already have a mission and you need to be prepared to fight to get it. Paul wanted a life and was prepared to give it his all. Anything is possible, and Paul really proves this with his life. There is always a chance that something will change, even if it takes a long time or seems impossible for you. So no matter what you're going through, it's worth it to keep going. And Paul even takes this sentiment a step further. He says that even though people may rather have lived without those challenges that make life so difficult, they can still be grateful for the things that those challenges teach them.
I can't say that I'm glad I caught polio, but I am glad I developed the knowledge, the ability that having caught polio, and I feel like I accomplished more than if I had lived without it. I love life. And when I open my eyes, I think, another day, good. I can accomplish this, I can fix that, I can read a picture, I can read a book, I can record, I can win that game.
Lesson number 5, get vaccinated. It's heartbreaking to know that not long after Paul was infected, just 3 years later, the polio vaccine became available for the public. If Paul had been able to receive the vaccine, he wouldn't have suffered the fate that he did. Because of access to the vaccine, new cases of polio have largely been eradicated in the Western world. Unfortunately, though, it's not completely gone, and if vaccination rates drop, it is possible for it to make a comeback. In 2022, we saw the first polio case in the US in almost a decade.
Go out to the world about polio. And the millions of children not protected against polio. They have to be before there's another epidemic.
Paul died early this year at the age of 78 and is greatly missed. His lessons live on, and he continues to inspire people every day. Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe for more videos about the most motivational people in the world.